Hello. I have a question about Israel and Trump's policy towards it. Do you think it's a conflict of interest for Miriam Adelson, an Israeli donor, to give millions of dollars to his campaign and then Trump have pro-Israeli policies?
And I'm just confused why that there's this notion that we might have owe Israel something, or that they're our greatest ally, or that we have to support this multi-hundred-billion-dollar foreign aid package to Israel to cover this, to quote Charlie Kirk, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
What I want to ask is, you are married to a woman who is not Christian. In her Wikipedia, I mean, I just looked it up. I wanted to know what her faith was. I didn't know this before. But she still calls herself Hindu. You are raising three kids in cultural, racial, religious household. How are you maintaining, or how are you teaching your kids not to keep your religion ahead of their mother's religion? Or how are you teaching them that your kind, they're that kind who got here just few years or few decades ago is different or is better than your mom's kind who got here just a generation before?
So, I have a question about Israel and Trump's policy towards it. Do you think it's a conflict of interest for Miriam Adelson, an Israeli donor, to give millions of dollars to his campaign and then Trump have pro-Israeli policies?
Well, if you're asking, do I think the President of the United States has a conflict of interest? No, I do not, because I know how the President of the United States makes his decisions and I see it behind the scenes. Now, as the President himself has said, Miriam Adelson, who, by the way, I know and I have a very good relationship with her, she is very clear about the fact. She doesn't hide the fact that she really loves Israel, and that is part of what motivates her political giving. That is a reality. At the same time, the President of the United States is America first through and through. And let me give you just a couple of examples of this. Number one, we have heard from some pro-Israel voices, some people who really love the state of Israel, that they don't want us to have a relationship with certain Middle Eastern countries. Well, the president, his attitude is, we need to build relationships with any country where we have shared interests, and he's gonna do it if it's in the interests of the American people, and he's done exactly that. Number two, there were people, and I remember this criticism of the President of the United States, I just raised it in the context of a conversation that I had with Charlie. I remember when people said that the President of the United States was gonna get us into a multi-100,000 troop regime change war for Israel. This was 4 months ago, this was 6 months ago. Now, the people who accused the President of the United States of wanting to get us into a regime change war for Israel, I wonder if they stepped back and said, you know what, we were wrong about that, because the President of the United States did not want to get us into a regime change war for any other country. He wanted to knock out a nuclear facility and get everybody back home, and that's exactly what he did. So I understand there's some frustrations out there, but I think the President of the United States, more than any president of my lifetime, is willing to stand up to anybody if he thinks it puts the interests of the American people first. Thank you.
Hello, Vice President Vance.
How you doing?
Good. I have a question. Do you condone large private corporations such as Palantir hoarding data caches on U.S. citizens?
No, I don't condone it. And here's the thing. So I get asked about Palantir a lot because there's this internet meme out there that somehow I am super in bed with Palantir. And here's the thing that I'd say about this. Palantir is a private company. They sometimes do a useful service, and sometimes they're going to do things that we don't like. You should be demanding that your representatives do two things when it comes to Palantir or when it comes to any other technology company. Number one, protecting your data. What's going on with artificial intelligence is going to mean that there are massive inducements to steal your data, to harvest it, and to use it against you to sell digital advertisements. That is not what I believe in, and I've been fighting against it, whether it's Palantir or any other technology company, literally before I ran for office. When I ran for office, I was criticized by Republicans in my Republican Senate primary because I was talking then about Google and Facebook harvesting our data. It's unacceptable. I don't care who does it. I don't want them to do it. Number two, and this is also very important, what's going on with artificial intelligence, we got to be worried about large-scale surveillance, okay? Everything, you asked about Palantir. Do you know that every time you make a credit card transaction, the credit card companies are collecting data on how you spend your money? Do you know that every time you linger over a link on the internet for more than a half second, the search engines are collecting data on you so that they can sell you advertisements? One of the biggest questions for American policy over the next 10 years is how to ensure that you are a sovereign citizen. And you cannot be a sovereign citizen if any private corporation or any government can steal something from you that belongs to you.
Hello, Mr. Vice President. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to talk here today. I did not agree with many of the things that you said right ahead of this, but I don't think that's my point to discuss here. What I want to ask is, you are married to a woman who is not Christian. In her Wikipedia, I mean, I just looked it up. I wanted to know what her faith was. I didn't know this before. But she still calls herself Hindu. You are raising three kids in cultural, racial, religious household. How are you maintaining or how are you teaching your kids not to keep your religion ahead of their mother's religion? Or how are you teaching them that your kind, they're that kind who got here just few years or few decades ago is different or is better than your mom's kind who got here just a generation before? How are you balancing that? And when you talk about too many immigrants here, when did you guys decide that number? Why did you sell us a dream? You made us spend our youth, our wealth in this country and gave us a dream. You don't owe us anything. We have worked hard for it. Then how can you as a vice president stand there and say that we have too many of them now and we are going to take them out to people who are here rightfully so by paying the money that you guys asked us? You gave us the path, and now how can you stop it and tell us we don't belong here anymore? And one more thing. Do you have to
There's a lot there. I don't know if I'm going to remember all this, but I will try.
I'm sorry. I had to say all of this, and please take it with I'm saying all of this with due respect.
Go ahead.
I
Please.
have no intention of causing a scene here or anything, but
we're not close to causing a scene. Don't worry.
But we talked about Christianity, all of this. I'm not even Christian, and I'm here standing to show support. Why are we making Christianity one of the major things that you have to have in common to be one of you guys, to show that I love America just as much as you do? Why is that still a question? Why do I have to be a Christian?
Okay, so there was a lot there, and I'm going to try to respond to as much of it as I can. So on the question of immigration, so first of all, I can believe that we should have lower immigration levels, but if the United States passed a law and made a promise to somebody, the United States, of course, has to honor that promise. Nobody's talking about that. I'm talking about people who came in violation of the laws of the United States of America, and I'm talking about in the future reducing the number of people. Sorry, what?
Can I continue on that? Because when you just said you are not stopping with the people who came here legally, right? But you are pushing out policies that hurt us. And these policies are not even solving the problems. These policies are just creating chaos.
No, ma'am. Okay, so again, I'm gonna finish answering the question, and then if I've answered all 9 of your questions in less than 15 minutes, then we can keep on going. We got to have a little fun, right? So here's the thing. I can believe that the United States should lower its levels of immigration in the future, while also respecting that there are people who have come here through lawful immigration pathways that have contributed to the country. But just because one person or 10 people or 100 people came in legally and contributed to the United States of America, does that mean that we're thereby committed to let in 1 million or 10 million or 100 million people a year in the future? No, that's not right. We cannot have, I'll go and finish. We cannot have an immigration policy where what was good for the country 50 or 60 years ago binds the country inevitably for the future. There's too many people who want to come to the United States of America, and my job as vice president is not to look out for the interests of the whole world, it's to look out for the people of the United States. Now, you asked a personal question about our interfaith household. And yes, my wife did not grow up Christian. I think it's fair to say that she grew up in a Hindu family, but not a particularly religious family in either direction. In fact, when I met my wife, we were both, I would consider myself an agnostic or an atheist, and that's what I think she would have considered herself as well. You know, everybody has to come to their own arrangement here. The way that we've come to our arrangement is she's my best friend. We talk to each other about this stuff. So we decided to raise our kids Christian. Our two oldest kids who go to school, they go to a Christian school. Our 8-year-old did his first communion about a year ago. That's the way that we have come to our arrangement. But, thank you. My 8-year-old was also very proud of his first communion. Thank you, guys. I'll tell him that Old Miss wishes him the best. But I think everybody has to have this own conversation when you're in a marriage. I mean, it's true for friends of mine who are in Protestant and Catholic marriages, friends of mine who are in, atheist and Christian marriages. You just got to talk to the only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions as a family unit. For us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important Christian principles is that you respect free will. Usha's closer to the priests who baptized me than maybe I am. They talk about this stuff. My attitude is you figure this stuff out as a family, and you trust in God to have a plan, and you try to follow it as best as you can. And that's what I try to do. I want to make a final point. So I don't want to cut you off. I want to be respectful to all the people behind you in line, but I want to make this point about immigration, okay? If you ask the question, what is the exact right number of immigrants for the United States to let in, it is just very specific on the context. If you go back to the 1920s, the United States passed an Immigration Reform Act that effectively cut down immigration to close to zero for 40 years in this country. And what happened over those 40 years? The many, many people who had come from many different foreign countries and different foreign cultures, they assimilated into American culture. And there was an expectation that they would assimilate into American culture. I think we have two problems in our immigration system today. And my guess is you're probably a slightly more leftist political persuasion, liberal political persuasion, maybe not. But here's the thing. I remember back in my establishment GOP days when I was still very early getting involved in Republican politics, I remember a conservative think tank person who told me that one of the reasons why immigration was really good is that if you had enough diversity in a country, people would mistrust each other and they wouldn't join labor unions. Okay? So when I see a lot of left-wing people who theoretically support organized labor saying we need to flood the country with a limitless number of immigrants, they're unwilling to set any limitations on it. My response to that is you are destroying the very social trust on which American freedom and prosperity was built. And that is really important to me. So the honest answer to your question, what is the exact number of immigrants America should accept in the future? Right now, the answer is far less than we've been accepting. We have got to become a common community again, and you can't do that when you have such high numbers of immigration, which is one of the reasons why we have the immigration policy we do. Thank you. Next.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a Christian man, and I'm just confused why that there's this notion that we owe Israel something, or that they're our greatest ally, or that we have to support this multi-hundred-billion-dollar foreign aid package to Israel to cover this, to quote Charlie Kirk, ethnic cleansing in Gaza. I'm just confused why this idea has come around, considering the fact that not only does their religion not agree with ours, but also openly supports the prosecution of ours.
Yeah, so let me say a few things about this. First of all, when the President of the United States says America first, that means that he pursues the interests of Americans first. That is our entire foreign policy. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to have alliances, that you're not going to work with other countries from time to time. And that is what the president believes, is that Israel, sometimes they have similar interests to the United States and we're going to work with them in that case. Sometimes they don't have similar interests to the United States. And this example, the most recent Gaza peace plan that all of us have been working on very hard for the past few weeks, the president of the United States could only get that peace deal done by actually being willing to apply leverage to the state of Israel. So when people say that Israel is somehow manipulating or controlling the president of the United States, they're not controlling this president of the United States, which is one of the reasons why we'd be able to have some of the success that we've had in the Middle East. Now you ask about, sort of Jews disagreeing with Christians on certain religious ideas. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the realities is that Jews do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Messiah. Obviously, Christians do believe that. There are some significant theological disagreements between Christians and Jews. My attitude is, let's have those conversations. Let's have those disagreements when we have them. But if there are shared areas of interest, we ought to be willing to do that too. For example, one thing I really, really care about is the preservation of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Christians believe that that is the site where Jesus Christ was crucified, and also that his tomb is right there as well. My attitude is, if we can work with our friends in Israel to make sure that Christians have safe access to that site, that's an obvious area of common interest. I am fine with that. What I'm not okay with is any country coming before the interests of American citizens, and it is important for all of us, assuming we're American citizens, to put the interest of our own country first. That's what we're going to do. That's what we try to do every single day, I promise you.
Recently, President Trump endorsed a candidate to run against Republican Representative Thomas Massie, who has opposed and criticized some of the Trump administration's aims. How would you address those who fear that principled disagreement or independent thinking is discouraged within the party because of how it can be framed as a betrayal, instead of as internal accountability or an opportunity for debate and negotiation?
So it's a very good question. And let me say, this one is hard for me. And the reason it's hard for me is because Thomas Massie he's one of the first people that ever reached out to me about my book or about political office. I've known Thomas Massie well before I ever got involved in politics. Thomas's wife died maybe it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. It was a little while ago. She died very unexpectedly, was a very sweet and kind woman. And I was probably one of the first people that called Thomas to offer my condolences. I think the problem with Thomas, and I've told him this in private, and now I guess I'll say it in public, is it's one thing to disagree with the party on a particular issue. It's one thing to have your independent stand on a number of questions. And by the way, some of the stuff where Thomas Massie has been independent against the Republican Party, I've agreed with him with. Thomas and I worked together during 2023, where I was trying to stop the limitless flow of American money to Ukraine, and Thomas was one of the people I was working closest with it. But that's one thing. Being independent, having your own opinions is one thing. Voting against the party on every single issue, you're eventually going to make too many enemies. And that is the problem that Thomas has had. It's not one issue, it's not 3 or 4 issues. It's that every time that we've needed Thomas for a vote, he has been completely unwilling to provide it. That is why the President of the United States has trained his ire on Thomas Massie. It's because we can never count on him for some of the most difficult votes. I wish that weren't the case. I say that as somebody who's known Thomas well before I got into politics, but politics is politics, and when you always vote against the party, you can't expect the party to actually back you. That's the reality.